There was a gentleman speaking at a meeting at the Sunset Room in Miami-Dade County, and I know his name, I know the group he belonged to, and I've never seen him again. And I actually worked with that group, and I've never seen this man again. But as I walked into that room that night, he was speaking, and he said, "So many times we stood in harm's way to prove that we were not afraid." And that hit me upside the head. And from that opened up some, that opened up some avenue for me to understand what you guys were talking about, or these, what the 12 steps were talking about when they talked about fear. Yeah, my name is Blue. I am an addict and an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is January 31st, 1987. I started drinking at an early age, which led, of course, to more drugs. I came of age in the 60s. And, I think that one of the oldest feelings I ever had in my life is never wanting to be here. I don't know where that comes from. I come from a good family, a loving family, but I always felt a little bit different, a little bit outside. And eventually that started, as I finally introduced myself or whatever to alcohol, that started a series of things that, became what they did. I like to say that I only got drunk once. It lasted 22 years. I was 35 years old when I got sober. High school, played sports for a while, junior varsity football, wrestled. I was a small guy. I played football at 117 pounds. I wrestled at 105. And so I had a chip on my shoulder. People tried to push me around, I guess, at times. And I didn't respond well to that. I was always, I guess, pretty scrappy. But that led to more things. I started finding along the way that a lot of that had to do with an addiction or alcoholism that I didn't know I had. I really didn't identify that for quite some time. I thought it was normal. I thought I was living a normal life, but I found out things as I grew, and a lot of information comes from that time. I carry that information into my recovery. It was, I believe my recovery is a journey, and that was part of my journey. I needed to do that. I had to live that. I don't know why, but that was my lot. And there's times when, as I look back on that I find that tied back to those years of being in high school and being that little guy. And I guess I was trying to prove something. And in recovery, I've come to find out that we talk about fear being a motivator, fear being, a teacher, fear being a character defect. And it was probably my biggest character defect. I thought because I was able to do that work on the iron that I wasn't afraid. But when I ended up coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, I share this story often. There was a gentleman speaking at a meeting at the Sunset Room in Miami-Dade County, and I know his name, I know the group he belonged to, and I've never seen him again. And I actually worked with that group, and I've never seen this man again. But as I walked into that room that night, he was speaking, and he said, "So many times we stood in harm's way to prove that we were not afraid." And that hit me upside the head. And from that opened up some, that opened up some avenue for me to understand what you guys were talking about, or these, what the 12 steps were talking about when they talked about fear. I started to realize that there were many little fears. This person that had become angry, hostile, and violent. Why was all that coming into play? Why was I always in fights and such things? And what that had to do with was my fear. I didn't think that you thought I was a man, so I proved it the only way I knew how, and that was the only skills that I had up to that time, you know. Um, Before I actually got to AA, some things transpired. I drank and I drugged throughout, my career as an iron worker and just as, whatever I was becoming, the man that I was supposed to be becoming. And I found, again, in recovery, I found that I had no coping skills. I had never, as an addict and an alcoholic, I had never worked my way through any situations. I worked a man's job, but I was a child when it came to any kind of a relationship with facing life. I was a child, and I acted that way, And so at some point in time, I got to a time in my life where I guess it was starting to come to a close. I did not know this. But a bunch of things transpired all in a short period of time. I started blacking out more in my drinking. I started getting drunk faster. Whereas that part of me that had that tolerance that could drink all day and all night and I drank, when I worked iron, I drank while I worked. I still look forward to a time at night when I could get serious about my drinking, but I don't think it was that much more. And a time came when everything started to change, and they tell us that alcohol and drugs are a progressive thing, and the progression was taking place. And it kind of shocked me. And I started to get to a place where the emptiness of being an alcoholic, the loneliness that comes with that, and that doesn't mean we don't have people around us. It doesn't mean that there's not relationships. It just means there's a hole in there that I don't know how to fill. And I spent all that time trying to fill it and trying to either fill it or run away from it or, whatever. And eventually I drank until I had a shotgun in my mouth. And I don't think that finalized the deal, but it was a big part of it. Right in that period of time, and we're talking a period of a few weeks, I had an accident coming home from work. Actually, I got rear-ended. I didn't get in an accident, but I had left work angry and resentful at somebody, so I had a bottle of hot vodka under the seat and I drank that. And this kid rear-ended me, and we were standing there talking about there's no real damage type thing, we can just take care of this by ourselves, and he was fine with that. But a cop happened to be driving by, and of course responsibly he pulled over to see if everything was okay. And I said to him, I think we got it, we're going to take care of it, and he was good with that. And then all of a sudden this other person who happened to be a police officer's son, which I found out later, approached him and said, I think he's been drinking. And that was probably my 8th DWI by that time. The rules, the laws were different then. I had never lost a license from it. I think I may have once had it pulled, I can't remember. But at that time he had to take further measures with me, and he did. He took me down to a place at the police station, and they had an obstacle course they used for I guess to discern how drunk you were or something. I don't know. And I think I blew a 2.4 at that time, and which was obviously not the highest it had ever been, but it was enough. And he could not believe that I was able to manipulate or go through this obstacle course the way I was. Anyway, a day later, there's a knock at my door. We lived in a trailer at the time in New Jersey. And I came to the door and I looked down and there was a fully uniformed police officer with his back to me, which shocked me and scared the hell out of me, actually. And he turned around and it was that cop. And he said to me, you know, I just came to see if you were okay. And of course, that threw me. I've never had a good relation at that time, a relationship with a police officer. And then he said to me, you know, it's none of my business, but do you think you might have a problem you need to look at? You know, and you take that and you put that together, the fact that somebody was there and actually showed concern, I guess, reached me at that time. And I had been in a detox for 5 days prior to that. And I had left and slowly went back to drinking. And then all of this took place. So I went back to that detox and I stayed there and I told them, I'm not leaving until you get me somewhere. And they did. They sent me to a rehab in Philadelphia called River House. And I got there and I started going through the process and you know, something happened. I started feeling comfortable. I started feeling, for some reason, that there was hope. And I had run into some people. I had gone to a few AA meetings and some of the old timers had approached me and gave me information, you know, and I was very, I think the first meeting I went to, a woman from the group with time approached me and asked me I didn't know how she knew I was a newcomer. Today I can tell because I know when there's a newcomer in the room too. She asked me how I was doing and I said I was doing pretty good, but I was kind of hurting because my mother had died while I was in detox and she didn't get to know that I was there. And this woman told me, she knows. She smiled at me and she said she knows. And I believed that and I accepted that. Today I know more why I accepted that than I did then. But it meant a lot to me. And so I took that with me, and of course here I am in this rehab, and I started learning things, you know, and I started, like I said, growing in faith and hope. And I had never had that before. And I enjoyed, my girlfriend at the time visited me and said she'd never seen me so peaceful. And when I left that rehab, my transition plan was to go to AA. And that's what I did. And so that's pretty much it, you know. Since then, January 31st, 1987 is my sobriety date. I've never turned my back on AA. I've never turned my back on my conception of what a higher power is. I believe and have faith in both. They may be one and the same. I have no idea. I don't know what God is, and I don't really care. I just know that when I do my prayer and meditation, things happen in my life and things get better.